country's public safety minister and its new fentanyl czar, as well as other officials from the border agency and the RCMP, are in Washington looking to make their case to their U.S. counterparts, and the Canadian delegation attempting to highlight what they see as early and repeated successes against fentanyl trafficking. Of course, we'll continue to follow this story for you here on CBC. It is 12:39 now. Thanks so much for being with us. Well, February is Black History Month, and it acknowledges the diversity of Black Canadians and the importance of Black leadership and the legacy being built for future generations. We're going to meet a guest in a moment who has been researching and presenting about elements of Black history in Canada, as well as sharing his own personal story as a fourth-generation Canadian and a descendant of a man who escaped on the Underground Railroad. And he says Black history is not as well known here in BC as it is in eastern parts of the country. So we'd love to hear your own story, your own personal history as a Black Canadian in BC. You think not enough is known about Black history here in this province, here in the western part of the country? And what do you think British Columbians need to learn? Our numbers, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also hit pound 690 on your cell phone, and you can email us bctoday@cbc.ca. Ron Nicholson is a director with the BC Black History Awareness Society, and he's based in Victoria. This month, he's been giving presentations at the Royal BC Museum. And I'm pleased to welcome Ron Nicholson to the show. Hello, Ron.
Hello, Michelle. By the way, I don't see your image on the screen, so
okay,
so I'd let you know that.
Well, thank you very much for letting me know that. I'm not sure that our system actually accommodates that, which I find actually unfortunate. But I know you can imagine that I'm listening intently.
Very good.
A very happy Black History Month to you.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
I would love to get into your family's history in a moment, but first, can you tell me, you've been making these presentations about Black history in Canada. Can you share what motivates you to share this knowledge?
Well, I'd say for the most part, Black history is part of Canadian history, and it's not really been recognized across Canada. And so as far as I'm concerned, I try to spread the word and educate people, Black, white, and anybody else that might be interested in the history of the country, because it is part of Canada's history.
And Filipino Canadian like myself. And I know that you get a question quite often that sort of tells you about how little people know. And what is that question?
Well, a lot of people ask, of course, when I'm meeting them, well, where are you from? And I might say, well, I'm from Ontario. And you get a response on occasion where they say, well, where are you really from? Like I'm required to be from Africa or the West Indies or whatever.
How do you feel about that?
So in my case, I'm happy to explain that I was born in Canada, and I'm a fourth-generation Canadian, and I've been in Canada my family has, since 1854, when Canada was a country, or before Canada became a country, which was in 1867. My great-grandfather, Adam Nicholson, did escape from slavery. He was a traveler on the Underground Railroad, and he made his way through Philadelphia, and where he received assistance. He traveled with two others at the time, and then Adam ended up traveling on to southern Ontario, and he settled in the Niagara area, where I was born 4 generations later.
And here is that personal history, and this is being passed down to you through oral history, right? This is
for the most part, oral history, and through my own research, I stumbled on the book called The Underground Railroad, which I consider to be the Bible of the Underground Railroad. And it was written by a gentleman named William Still, who was the president of what was called the Vigilance Committee in Philadelphia. And he was encouraged to write down a lot of fugitives or escaped slaves made their way through Philadelphia, and they were interviewed, and where they came from, what it was like, and where they were going to, and he was convinced to keep records, which he later was talked into publishing, even though it was quite a dangerous thing to even be in possession of the information or any books that had anything to do with slavery and escaped slaves and et cetera, et cetera. So in 1868, he did publish the book, and in that book actually was one of the places where I found the interview of my great-grandfather, Adam Nicholson.
Wow.
And it's on page 228, and it mentions the interview of the three gentlemen that were traveling and escaping from West Virginia is where they actually escaped from. And they made their way on, as I said, through Philadelphia, traveling, mostly at night and, by the cars occasionally, which is what we called a section by train or what have you. And they would hide at night in fields and any place, caves or any place where they could be prevented from being seen by the population or slave catchers during the day. Because after the fugitive slave law, there were what they called slave catchers out there and traveling around through the northern states and trying to catch escaped slaves and send them back to the south and put them back into slavery.
What did you learn further, like looking into not just your great-grandfather's story, but overall, what have you learned about the Underground Railroad and its history? And you told us quite a bit there, but what more have you learned about it?
Oh, well, the Underground Railroad, of course, was not actually a railroad. It was a network of routes that people escaped from and the routes that they traveled on. And because of the secrecy, they wanted to keep things secret. They ended up calling it the Underground Railroad. And they used the terminus, they used the terminology of the railroad, like there was a president of the railroad. There was conductors like Josiah Henson or Harriet Tubman were considered conductors of the railroad. They were some of the ones that helped slaves